I am a freelance journalist who frequently travels to various places in search of unique stories and undiscovered mysteries. I am 29 years old, have no close family, and spend more time on the road than at home. I am not someone who easily believes in the supernatural. As a journalist, my job is to uncover the facts behind events that society considers mystical. I have covered numerous strange stories, haunted villages, abandoned hospitals, and mysterious rituals in remote areas. But so far, everything I have encountered has always had a logical explanation. Since childhood, I've had an unusual connection with the unseen world. My mother, a fortune teller, often told me that I possessed a sharp intuition, capable of piercing the boundary between the real world and the other side. However, I always dismissed it, considering it mere superstition. My father disappeared in a mysterious accident when I was still a child. His car was found burned on the side of the road, but his body was never recovered. My mother always believed that something took him that night, something not of this world. As a rationalist, I grew up believing that truth can be explained with facts, not folklore or ancient beliefs. I spent years investigating strange occurrences, hoping to find logical answers behind them. That night's journey felt exhausting. The highway was deserted. Heavy rain relentlessly pounded against my windshield, and the radio played nothing but irritating static. I had just finished a business meeting in another city and still had to drive dozens of kilometers to my hotel. My stomach had been empty since the afternoon, and I was on the verge of dozing off behind the wheel. Then, I saw a small roadside diner with a flickering neon sign that read 24-hour restaurant. No other name, no striking decorations. The place looked like an old building that had stood for ages, surrounded by dark trees that framed the silence of the night. I pulled over, turned off the engine, and stepped inside. As soon as I stepped inside, warmth immediately enveloped me. The air was filled with the scent of soup and coffee, and the dim lighting created a cozy atmosphere. This restaurant felt like a place that had once thrived in the past. Its interior was classic, with old wooden tables, plush chairs, and shelves filled with black and white photographs from an era I couldn't quite place. There were 3 other customers inside. An old man sat in the corner, stirring his coffee endlessly. A middle-aged woman was reading a book, and a teenager in a hoodie stared blankly ahead. None of them spoke. I took a seat by the window and picked up the menu. That was when I noticed a note under the glass tabletop. Rules for customers. 1. Do not speak to other customers after 2 a.m. 2. If someone enters without a shadow, leave immediately. 3. If the waiter asks, "Would you like tonight's special?" answer, "No." 4. Do not stare into the kitchen for more than 5 seconds. 5. If someone knocks on the window from outside, do not turn around. I smirked. It seemed like the owner of this place had a fondness for horror vibes. I decided not to think too much about it and waited for the waiter to arrive. A few minutes later, an elderly woman in a red uniform approached. Her face was expressionless, her eyes empty as if she wasn't truly seeing me. "What would you like to order?" Her voice was flat. I pointed randomly at something on the menu. As I went to put it down, I noticed her hands were trembling. "There's a special menu tonight. Would you like to try it?" She asked again. "No, thank you. Sorry, may I ask you something?" I said. "Of course," she replied. "What's the deal with the rules on this table?" I asked, amused. She paused for a moment. Then, in a lower voice, she said, "Just follow them if you want to make it home safely." I let out a small laugh, thinking she was just playing along with the restaurant's eerie theme, but there wasn't the slightest change in her expression. She simply wrote down my order and walked away. I ate in silence. The food here was surprisingly good, and the atmosphere was cozy. Outside, the rain continued to pour, blurring the window with droplets, but something was bothering me. There was no sound, no music, no clatter of kitchen utensils, and no conversation from the other customers. Only the sound of rain and the slow ticking of the wall clock. At 1:59 a.m., the old man in the corner suddenly stood up and left without a word, abandoning his still full cup of coffee. I swallowed hard. The doorbell chimed. A woman entered, completely drenched, her long, wet hair covering her face. I lowered my head but kept my gaze on the floor. No shadow. I froze. She sat at the table near me. Her voice was soft but clear. "It's so cold outside, isn't it?" I held my breath, remembering the first rule: do not speak. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her tone grew sharper. I remained silent, my heart pounding. Then I felt an intense gaze from the kitchen. The elderly waitress stood in the doorway, her face stricken with fear. She shook her head slowly. A warning. I stood up cautiously, trying to stay composed. Reaching into my pocket, I placed a few bills on the table and walked toward the door. Footsteps behind me. I pushed the door open hastily and ran to my car. I started the engine and sped away. The rain was still pouring, but I didn't care. I glanced at the rearview mirror. The woman was still standing in front of the restaurant, watching me, but I couldn't make out her face. After driving for several kilometers, I began to feel calmer. Maybe this was just some elaborate gimmick to scare customers. I shook my head, feeling foolish for being so afraid. But then something made me slam on the brakes. The restaurant was in front of me again. I stared at the road, holding my breath. I had just driven away from there. How could I be back at the same place? I decided to pull over and rest on the roadside. I woke up trembling, my head spinning. My entire body was drenched, not from the rain, but from cold sweat. I was still in my car, but something felt different. The engine was off, and outside the sky was beginning to lighten. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a thin mist that blanketed the road. I let out a long breath, trying to steady myself. But when I glanced out the window, my heart dropped. The restaurant was gone. All that remained was an empty lot with a weathered wooden sign, closed since 1980. I couldn't accept this. This wasn't just a nightmare or hallucination. I was really there. I ate at that restaurant. I saw the elderly waitress. I saw the other customers. I needed answers. I started the car and drove to the nearest town. After hours of searching through old library records and speaking with a few locals, I began piecing together the mystery. The restaurant had once existed. And yes, a massive fire broke out in 1980, killing 13 people, including the owner and staff. The cause was a gas leak that triggered a devastating explosion. But there was something the old news articles didn't mention. According to an elderly man I met at a small cafe, strange rumors circulated after the fire. Some claimed they had still seen the restaurant standing, even though it had officially been reduced to ashes. Even more chilling, those who had entered were never seen again. "But you're still here," the old man said, eyeing me with suspicion. "That's strange." I fell silent. I was still alive. But why? I was the only one who made it out. I returned to my hotel and locked myself in my room. My thoughts were a mess. I tried to recall every detail of what happened in that restaurant. Something felt off. I opened my laptop and dug deeper, and then I found something that sent chills through my body. Among the victims of the fire, one body was never identified. A young woman found dead outside the restaurant with no visible shadow. She was the woman who sat near me that night. The woman who asked, "It's so cold outside, isn't it?" I stared at the screen, barely breathing. Why did I survive? Why didn't I disappear like the others? Then I remembered the one thing that might have saved me. I followed the rules. I didn't speak after 2 a.m. I didn't stare into the kitchen for too long. I didn't accept the special menu. I didn't turn around when someone knocked on the window. As a rationalist, I grew up believing that the truth could always be explained by facts, not folklore or ancient superstitions. I spent years investigating strange occurrences, hoping to find logical answers behind them. But after that night at the restaurant, everything I believed in started to crumble. I was the only one who survived. Why? After digging deeper into the history of that place, I realized that my presence there might not have been a coincidence. Perhaps something had called me to it. I wasn't just a passing journalist looking for a story. There was a connection between me and that place. Then I found something that made my skin crawl. While going through old archives of the restaurant fire victims, I came across a name I recognized. My father. He had once worked at that restaurant. He was one of the few employees who left before the fire. But after the incident, he vanished without a trace. I began to wonder, did the restaurant try to pull me back because of my father? Was I allowed to leave only because they had plans for me later? Or had I never truly escaped them? I didn't know the answer, but one thing was certain. They were still waiting for me. I tried to move on with my life, but every night I couldn't sleep without thinking about what had happened. Every time it rained, I felt something watching me. Every time I drove down an empty road at night, I sensed that someone was waiting for me to return. And then the most terrifying thing happened. One night, I received a message from an unknown number. "Thank you for visiting. Tonight's special menu is still waiting." I dropped my phone. My heart pounded. This was impossible. I rushed to close all the curtains in my apartment and locked every door. But when I turned to the window, the one I had forgotten to shut completely, I saw it, the shadow of the restaurant standing across the street. The neon sign blinked faintly, open 24 hours, and inside, through the glass, I saw her, the elderly waitress, staring at me, waiting for me to come back. So if you ever find yourself driving down that road on a rainy night and you see a small restaurant with warm lights inside, be careful. And if you find a set of customer rules written on the table, follow them. Maybe, just maybe, you'll make it home safely, like I did. But if you don't, you might become the restaurant's next new customer.